Before sunrise, you are already awake because Baghdad does not wait for daylight. A water carrier is moving through the lane, a baker's oven is heating, and somewhere beyond the walls of your house, the first call to prayer spreads over the roofs. Your job today is simple. Take a bundle of paper to a merchant, collect what he owes your employer, and return with enough money to help buy food for the household. But doing that means crossing one of the largest, busiest, and most complicated cities on Earth.
There is no single average life in Baghdad in the year 900. A palace servant, an enslaved worker, a wealthy merchant, a Christian physician, a Jewish trader, a soldier, and a poor laborer could live almost different worlds inside the same city. So for this journey, you are a free Muslim man in your 20s from a modest artisan merchant household. You are not rich, but you are not starving. You can read a little, you work for your living, and your family depends on several people bringing money home. Studies of Abbasid social life show just how strongly occupation, wealth, status, religion, and connection to the court could shape daily experience.
Your house would likely look plain from the street. The important space is inside. Rooms around a private courtyard, shaded areas for the hottest part of the day, storage jars, woven mats, wooden chests, lamps, cooking vessels, and perhaps a flat roof used when the weather allows. Water is precious, but Baghdad is built around rivers and canals. The Tigris cuts through the city, irrigation channels feed districts around it, and water carriers are common enough to give their name to a street in descriptions of early Baghdad. You do not turn a tap. Water has to be drawn, carried, stored, and protected.
Breakfast is not a palace feast. For a household like yours, the reliable foods are built around grains, bread or porridge, dates, vegetables, dairy products, and whatever meat the family can afford. The elite cuisine of Abbasid Baghdad can be astonishingly elaborate, mixing meat, herbs, nuts, fruits, spices, sour flavors, and Persian-influenced dishes. But that is not what every citizen eats every morning. The difference between your table and the caliph's table is not merely quantity. It is access to ingredients arriving from an enormous commercial world. Surviving culinary material reflects both sophisticated court cuisine and the food culture of Baghdad's urban elite.
When you step outside, Baghdad immediately feels less like one city and more like many cities pressed together. This is the first thing modern pictures often get wrong. The famous circular city, founded by Al-Mansur more than a century earlier, still matters historically, but by 900 it is no longer the whole story, and it is not where all the action is. Baghdad has expanded across both banks of the Tigris into districts, markets, roads, palaces, gardens, cemeteries, religious buildings, workshops, workshapes, and crowded residential quarters. Just 8 years earlier, in 892, the Abbasid court had returned from Samarra, and Caliph al-Mu'tadid was establishing his government on the eastern side of Baghdad.
You begin in the commercial world of the Western Bank, where Kark and the surrounding districts are packed with specialized trades. Instead of one giant modern shopping center, different areas are associated with different goods and professions. You may pass food sellers, cloth merchants, money changers, craftsmen, animal markets, perfume sellers, paper sellers, and booksellers. Noise comes from bargaining, tools, animals, porters, and people trying to move through the same space. Smells change every few steps. Bread, sweat, dust, hot oil, animals, spices, smoke, river water. Historical descriptions preserve numerous specialized markets and even a distinct bookseller's market.
You cannot assume every merchant is free to use any weight, measure, or quality he wants. Baghdad has officials responsible for supervising markets and crafts. In 895, only a few years before your day, the office of the Mutasib in Baghdad is recorded supervising professions, marketplace activity, weights, measures, adulteration, and fraud. That matters to you because your pay may depend on a fair transaction. A dishonest scale is not a small detail when a household lives close to its weekly limits. Then you reach the Tigris. The river is not scenery, it is infrastructure. Boats carry people and goods, and bridges made from linked boats connect parts of Baghdad across the current. Crossing the river changes the visual scale of your day. Behind you are dense commercial quarters. Ahead, the eastern bank is becoming increasingly important to the restored Abbasid court. Al-Mu'tadid is building and enlarging palaces there, and the political center of gravity is shifting. The city you live in is literally changing shape around the government.
From the river, Baghdad's real wealth becomes easier to understand. It does not come only from local production. Goods move through the Abbasid world by land and sea, linking Iraq with Iran, Central Asia, the Persian Gulf, India, the Mediterranean, and farther east. Chinese ceramics circulated through the Middle East in the 8th to 10th centuries by trade, gifts, tribute, and other routes. Imported spices, precious materials, fine textiles, unusual foods, books, medicines, and luxury objects can reach Baghdad because the city sits inside a huge network of money, administration, and demand. You may never own most of these things, but you see their effects in the market.
The paper under your arm is another clue. By your lifetime, paper has become deeply important to administration and intellectual life in the Islamic world. Baghdad has paper makers, paper sellers, copyists, stationers, and booksellers. A book is still valuable because every copy has to be written by hand, but paper makes the production and movement of texts far easier than a world dependent only on parchment. If you can read, a stationer's shop can be as fascinating as any palace. Legal texts, poetry, grammar, medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, religious works, letters, and practical documents can all circulate through networks of scholars and scribes. This is where another popular image of Baghdad needs correction. You may have heard the city described as if everyone simply walked into one enormous university called the House of Wisdom. The reality is more complicated. Baghdad really is a major center of scholarship, and the Abbasid period really does support an extraordinary translation and research movement involving Greek, Persian, Indian, Syriac, and Arabic traditions. But historians debate exactly what the Bait al-Hikmah was and how central it was to all that activity. Evidence also identifies it with the Caliphal Palace Library. It is safer to think of Baghdad's intellectual life as a network of court patronage, libraries, translators, scholars, physicians, astronomers, book markets, and private circles, rather than one magical building where all knowledge is produced.
And the city's scholars are not working only on old ideas. Astronomers in Baghdad and the wider Abbasid world refine calculations and observational methods. Physicians study and translate medical traditions. Mathematicians build on earlier Greek and Indian work while producing new results. Philosophers argue over reason, nature, religion, and logic. A person like you may never become a court scholar, but knowledge still reaches your life through calendars, contracts, medical advice, accounting, religious study, administration, and the written documents that increasingly organize urban society. Baghdad remained a major center of astronomical study between the 8th and 10th centuries. By midday, the heat and dust are harder to ignore. Baghdad's sophistication does not remove the physical limits of the year 900. Streets are not air-conditioned.
Clean water takes labor. Waste, animals, smoke, mud, insects, fire, disease, and seasonal flooding are real concerns. A serious infection can become dangerous quickly. If you are injured, you live in a society with skilled physicians and a sophisticated medical tradition, but treatment still depends heavily on your money, connections, the practitioner you reach, and the nature of the illness. Advanced for its time does not mean safe by modern standards. A public bath can therefore feel less like a luxury and more like part of urban life. Medieval sources describe Baghdad as famous for large numbers of hammams, although the spectacular totals given by writers should be treated cautiously. A bathhouse gives you heat, water, washing, grooming, and social contact in one place. It also reminds you that privacy works differently here. Your home is private from the street, but much of your working, trading, praying, bathing, and social life happens in shared spaces governed by custom, religion, profession, and status. Status is everywhere. The clothing you wear, the people who accompany you, the animal you ride, if you can afford one, the neighborhood you enter, the quality of your food, and the way officials speak to you all reveal where you stand. Baghdad is cosmopolitan, but it is not socially equal. Muslims of different backgrounds live alongside Christian and Jewish communities and people from many regions, while the Abbasid elite depends on administrators, soldiers, servants, scholars, craftsmen, merchants, laborers, enslaved people. The same city that can reward learning and trade can also be rigid, dangerous, and politically brutal. That becomes impossible to forget as you pass closer to the caliphal zone. Al-Mu'tadid has restored some strength to the Abbasid government after decades of crisis, but the state is not floating on endless treasure. When he took power in 892, the central treasury was in severe difficulty, while his reign worked to rebuild authority and revenue. New palaces can therefore mean two things at once. They are proof that Baghdad is again the seat of the caliph, and proof that enormous resources are concentrated around power. Your own problem is smaller. You still need to get paid. At the merchant's shop, the bundle of paper finally leaves your hands. Perhaps the payment comes in silver dirhams. You check the amount carefully. Coins are not abstract numbers on a screen. They have weight, metal, and immediate consequences. Too little money means less food, delayed purchases, or a debt carried into another day. Baghdad's commercial importance rested partly on the enormous purchasing power circulating through the Abbasid capital in gold and silver. On the way home, you buy what your household needs rather than what the city can theoretically offer. This contrast may be the best way to understand Baghdad in 900. Somewhere in the same city, a wealthy table can serve complicated dishes scented with imported spices. A scholar can study astronomy. A court official can handle documents from distant provinces. A merchant can inspect foreign ceramics. A laborer can still worry about the price of grain. A family can still lose stability because of illness, fire, political violence, or a bad season. As evening comes, the markets thin and the city's sound changes. Oil lamps light interiors, but darkness still matters. You return through familiar streets, carrying food instead of paper. At home, the courtyard that felt like a workspace in the morning becomes the center of the family again. People eat, talk, pray, repair clothing or tools, settle small arguments, and prepare for another day. On a hot night, the roof may offer cooler air than the rooms below.
So what would your life actually be like in Baghdad in 900 AD? It would not feel like living inside a museum called the Islamic Golden Age. You would experience the age through ordinary pressures, water that must be carried, money that must be earned, food that must be bought, prayers and customs that organize time, markets that connect you to distant lands, and political decisions made behind palace walls that can still change your street. You would live in a city where a handwritten page could carry ideas across civilizations, while a dishonest wait in the market could ruin your day. And tomorrow, before sunrise, Baghdad would begin moving again.